Malicious compliance number 2. Respecting people's personal time and not bothering them on their days off? Absolutely, but that works both ways. I work for a pretty terrible company, just another corporate black hole, where upper management has almost no idea what's actually happening in the stores. When I first started, we had an amazing manager. He did everything he could to shield us from the endless stream of corporate nonsense that always rolls downhill. Eventually, he got promoted and transferred to another store. After a few failed replacements, we finally got a new store manager. She was loud. She'd stand right on the sales floor chatting with her friends, loudly discussing controversial topics, and swearing like a pirate in front of customers. More than once, customers quietly asked me why I didn't report her to the manager. When I told them she was the manager, they'd just roll their eyes and give me a sympathetic nod. Our store has a simple system for when the manager isn't around. We're a small team, and most of us work shifts alone. If the store manager is opening the next morning, we call her at the end of the night if there's anything important she needs to know. If the assistant manager is opening instead, we call them. Simple. One evening, I found a problem that I felt was serious enough that it shouldn't wait until the manager's next shift. I took a photo and sent her a short text explaining the situation. One of our suppliers had violated food safety regulations, and I wanted to make sure she knew about it. When I came back to work, I saw her reply. Word for word, it said, "I need you to understand that unless the store is on fire or you're being robbed, contact the assistant manager, not me. Only text me in actual emergencies. Thanks." Fair enough. Message received. 4 days later, she texted me again, criticizing me for supposedly not doing part of my job, even though it was actually a manager's responsibility, not mine. A few minutes later, another message popped up. "Oh, you actually did do it. Sorry." Right after that, she gave me some points in our company's employee recognition system, basically the corporate version of good job. I didn't reply. I wasn't at work. Later, she texted asking what my hourly pay rate was because she needed it for my performance review. I answered that one, even though honestly, that's something she should already know. It's literally part of her job. After that, the texts got even more ridiculous. "Have you seen the scissors? Do you know where this is?" Stuff like that. But according to the rule she had made, none of those situations involved a fire, a robbery, or an emergency. So if I'm off the clock, it's not my problem. From that point on, I made a decision. If I'm not working, I don't respond. If she calls, it goes straight to voicemail. If she texts, I leave it on red and answer only when I clock in for my next shift. Then the company introduced a brand new rule: no phones during work hours. Well, okay then. That means she can't text or call me while I'm working either, unless she calls the store's landline. And that's where things got even funnier. The company wanted everyone to start using a new messaging app for work communication. The only problem? They also banned us from taking our phones out during our shifts. So in the app's welcome chat, where everyone in the company could see it, I asked a simple question. Does this new app mean the no phone policy has been lifted, or are we expected to use it during our personal time, effectively working for free? The message was visible to the entire company. The official response was, "We'll look into that and get back to everyone with clarification." They never did. To this day, almost nobody uses the app because according to company policy, phones aren't allowed during work. Oops. Guess if my manager wants to talk to me on my day off now, she'll have to drive to my house. Maybe she shouldn't have come down so hard on me over that one text message. Stop being so friendly. I worked as a receptionist at an organization that provided psychiatric and mental health services. At the time, we had 14 clinicians who reviewed referrals and paperwork sent over from various psychiatric facilities. I always greeted people with a smile. Whenever someone walked in, I'd say hello, exchange a few friendly words, and then we'd both get back to work. People often told me they appreciated my positive attitude and hoped I'd never lose it. But our office director was unpredictable. One month she'd be warm, friendly, and easy to talk to. The next, she'd criticize me over the smallest things. I never knew which version of her I was going to get. One day, she called me into her office. She told me I talked too much, spent too much time chatting with my coworkers, and that it was preventing me from getting my work done. None of that was true. According to her, I should simply greet people and end the conversation there. I looked at her and said, "From now on, I'll do exactly what you're asking. No more conversations." I'd hand people their paperwork, explain what they needed to know, and immediately return to my desk. She smiled and said, "That's exactly what I want." The next morning, I came in as usual. I smiled, greeted everyone, and then put my head down and got straight to work. Whenever I walked into someone's office to deliver documents or assign cases, they'd try to start a conversation. I'd politely interrupt them. "Sorry, I need to get back to my desk." They'd look at me with confused expressions, but simply nod. This went on for several days. By the following week, people started approaching me one by one. "Are you okay? You seem really distant lately. If something's bothering you, my door is always open." I'd smile, thank them for their concern, and say, "I'm fine, I just need to get back to work." That continued all week. Then the director called me into her office again. She asked, "What's going on?" I smiled and replied, Nothing's wrong. I'm doing my job. Everything is getting finished on time. The clinicians are receiving all their assignments, and I've reduced conversations to the absolute minimum, just like you asked. She looked at me for a moment before saying, "The staff is worried about you." Apparently, because I'd stopped talking to everyone, they thought I might be depressed. Several of them had even gone to her and said that if I ever needed someone to talk to, their doors were always open. She sat there silently for a few seconds. Then she finally sighed and said, "Just keep conversations to a few minutes." I smiled. No problem. My coworker insisted he wanted Asterix in the presentation, so that's exactly what he got. Back in the mid-2000s, I worked in a marketing department. One day, my coworker Paul was pacing back and forth beside his desk, dictating a PowerPoint presentation, while I built the slides and made everything look polished. At one point, he said, "Put an asterisk before every bullet point." Now, I'm a bit of a grammar nerd, especially when it comes to words. And to make matters worse, Paul and I didn't exactly get along. The day before, we'd already argued about how to pronounce the letter H. He insisted it was pronounced one way and refused to admit he was wrong, even after I practically shoved a dictionary in front of him. So, I was more than ready for round two. As calmly as I could, I asked, "You mean an asterisk, not Asterix, right?" He stopped and stared at me. "Asterix, you know, the little star? Actually, it's called an asterisk." "No, you're wrong. It's Asterix." He turned to our other coworker. "John, it's Asterix, isn't it?" John took one look at us, shrugged, lowered his head, and suddenly became very interested in his own work. I smiled. "So I was wrong yesterday too? Should I go grab the dictionary again?" "No, it's Asterix. Just do it and stop arguing." "No problem." Then I asked one last time, "Just to be absolutely sure, you really want Asterix before every bullet point, not an asterisk?" "Yes." "All right, whatever you say." For anyone too young to know, Asterix is the famous hero from the classic French comic books. Since Paul was so confident he wanted Asterix, I quickly searched Google for a picture of him. I found the perfect one. Asterix the Gaul triumphantly pointing a finger into the air. It looked surprisingly motivational next to each item on the slide. Paul was planning to print the presentation and head straight into a meeting, so he didn't see what I'd done until the very last second. "What is that?" he shouted. "A Viking?" I looked at him, completely confused. "I don't know what you mean, Paul." "That's Asterix. And he's a Gaul, not a Viking. You specifically told me you wanted Asterix before every bullet point. Bit of an unusual design choice, but you were pretty insistent. After all, I had even asked him twice. It was his second embarrassing loss in 2 days, and if memory serves me right, he never argued so confidently with me again. A professional photographer thought he knew optics better than 3 eye doctors. It cost him 750 euros. I'm a licensed optician in France. As opticians, we're trained in physiological optics and vision analysis. We can adjust an existing prescription when necessary, but we're not legally allowed to write one from scratch. Back when I was still training, one of my coworkers had the perfect example of malicious compliance. At the time, French law didn't require a medical prescription to buy glasses. One day, a customer came into our store after visiting 3 different ophthalmologists. Each doctor had given him a slightly different prescription. Instead of trusting one of them, he decided to build his own. He picked the parts he liked from each prescription and combined them into what he believed was the perfect one. The biggest problem was the addition power in his progressive lenses. If you're not familiar with progressive lenses, the addition is the extra magnifying power in the lower part of the lens that helps you read and focus on things up close. In almost every case, that reading power is the same in both eyes. A significant difference between the two is extremely rare and usually only prescribed for very specific medical conditions. This customer had no such condition. He simply wanted one eye focused at roughly 60 to 70 centimeters, while the other focused at about 40 centimeters. Imagine wearing a high heel on one foot and a slipper on the other. Unless your body has somehow adapted to that, it's going to feel terrible. My coworker explained this to him several times. The customer just shrugged. "I'm a professional photographer. I understand optics. Just make the glasses the way I asked." My coworker warned him that our satisfaction guarantee would not apply to this order. He explained again, this time as a licensed optician fulfilling his professional duty, that it was a very bad idea. He even had the customer sign a document confirming that he had been fully warned about the possible consequences. Remember, he wasn't just a salesperson giving personal advice. He was a licensed eye care professional, but the customer refused to listen. "It'll be fine. I know what I'm doing." All right then. So my coworker did exactly what the customer requested. A few weeks later, the lenses arrived. They were a high-end pair of progressive lenses worth around 750 euros. The customer put them on and almost immediately said, "These are awful. They're so uncomfortable. I can't see anything properly." Well, yeah. But this can't be normal. Actually, it was completely normal. So, what are we going to do now? We? Nothing. Silence. In the end, we decided to meet him halfway. We offered him a discount on a brand new pair made with a proper prescription. Technically, we could have asked the manufacturer to replace the lenses for free under their adaptation guarantee. Programs like that exist for genuine adjustment problems, prescription errors, manufacturing defects, or rare medical situations. This wasn't one of those cases. The lenses had been manufactured exactly as the customer requested. They worked exactly as they were supposed to. The outcome was exactly what everyone expected, except the customer. My 4-year-old completely outsmarted me. My son is 4 years old, and he's an absolute little menace. Today he gave me a masterclass in finding loopholes. He woke up seemingly determined to test every ounce of my patience, and from that moment on, it became a very long day. I'm not sure this technically counts as malicious compliance, but he's constantly testing our rules and looking for ways around them. I'll skip all the usual toddler chaos and jump to the end of the day. By this point, I wasn't trying to be the world's greatest parent anymore. I was just trying to survive until bedtime. Incident number 1. We had burgers for dinner. Afterward, we gave him some snacks and a glass of milk. I told him, if you're still hungry, you can have a piece of fruit from the bowl. Immediately, he started asking for yogurt, cheese, mac and cheese, more milk, leftovers. Basically, he listed everything in our refrigerator. I didn't want him going to bed hungry, but I figured this: if he's genuinely hungry, he'll eat some fruit. So I repeated, no more food from the fridge. If you want something, have a fruit. A little while later, I started hearing strange crunching noises from the living room. I went to see what was going on. I walked in, he looked me dead in the eyes, while happily chewing on the cat's food. Then he grinned and said, "It's not from the fridge," and burst out laughing. At that point, I accepted defeat. I told him he could eat literally anything else instead. As I'd suspected, he wasn't actually hungry. On the bright side, brushing his teeth that night was a lot more thorough than usual. Incident number 2. Bedtime was finally just around the corner. Don't get me wrong, I love my son more than anything, but after chasing a 4-year-old around all day, I was really looking forward to putting him to bed so I could spend a little quiet time with our newborn. The very last thing he had to do before bed was use the bathroom. Suddenly, it turned into a full-blown debate over which bathroom he wanted to use. He changed his mind about 30 times. Finally, completely exhausted, I said, "I don't care where you pee, just go pee." That was a mistake. I went into his bedroom to pick out a bedtime story and turn off the lights. A minute later, he called from the bathroom, "Dad." I walked in, and at first, I couldn't even see him. Then I realized he was sitting inside the bathtub. Completely confused, I asked, "What happened?" He looked up at me and said, "My left foot got a little wet. Can you dry it off?" Yep. Let's just say the towel went straight into the washing machine, and there was absolutely no need to flush the toilet. Honestly, there weren't any real consequences. I just stood there laughing for a solid minute and learned a very important lesson. From now on, I'm going to choose my words much more carefully. Don't microwave my muffin. Okay, enjoy it frozen. Years ago, back when I was in high school, I worked at Wendy's. At the time, they were just starting to experiment with breakfast, coffee, muffins, and all that. The muffins arrived completely frozen. Store policy was simple: microwave each one for about 30 seconds before serving. One morning during breakfast rush, a woman walked up to the counter after getting her order. She said, "This muffin is too hot, I want a new one, and don't microwave it." I replied, "I'm sorry ma'am, but we have to microwave them because they arrive frozen." "I don't care," she snapped. "I want a muffin that hasn't been in the microwave." Then she turned around and marched back to her table. It was a long time ago, so I probably don't remember every detail perfectly. I think another employee even tried explaining to her that the muffins were frozen solid before we heated them. She wasn't interested, so alright. A few moments later, I brought her exactly what she'd asked for: a completely frozen muffin. It was rock hard. It was so frozen that the paper wrapper was literally stuck to it. You couldn't even peel it off. I placed it on a plate in front of her and her 3 friends. Then, in my absolute best customer service voice, I said, "Here's your muffin that wasn't microwaved, just like you requested." The look on her face, it was the expression of someone who had just realized they'd completely defeated themselves. I turned around and walked away. Part of me wishes I'd stayed a little longer. I would have loved to see her friends trying not to laugh, or watching her attempt to bite into a frozen brick of a muffin. But cool guys don't look back at explosions. They just keep walking. Although, to be fair, I was also a shy teenager, so I mostly disappeared behind the counter before she had a chance to yell at me again about the muffin being the wrong temperature. Later, when I went to clean their table, the frozen muffin was still sitting there. The wrapper had been peeled back about halfway. One tiny corner was missing. It looked like she'd actually tried to break off a piece with her fingers. The funniest part? By the time she'd finished complaining and waited for a replacement, her original muffin would have cooled down to the perfect temperature. Instead, she wasted 2 muffins and her own money. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. If you have any thoughts about what happened, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.